I picked up a hitchhiker outside Barstow at 2 in the morning, and by the time I reached Las Vegas 6 hours later, I understood I had been talking to a dead man the entire drive. His hand was ice cold when he shook mine before he got in, and I told myself it was just a desert night. Let me back up. 3 weeks before that, I'd taken a job that had me driving from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City twice a month, hauling equipment for a company that didn't care what hours I kept as long as the truck showed up on time. I liked the night drives. Less traffic, cooler air, just me and the radio fading in and out of static past Barstow where the signal gives up entirely. I'd done the route maybe 6 times without incident. This was the 7th. I left LA around 11 at night, which put me hitting the long empty stretch of the 15 right around 1:30. That road out there is nothing. No lights, no other cars for 20-30-minute stretches, just your headlights and the reflective mile markers ticking by. I remember passing marker 180-something and thinking the dark out there felt heavier than usual, though I chalked that up to being tired. Around mile 191, I saw him. A guy standing on the shoulder, not walking, just standing, facing the road with his thumb out like he'd been waiting there a while. No car broken down nearby that I could see, no bag, nothing. Just a guy in a flannel shirt in the middle of nowhere at 1 in the morning. I want to be clear, I don't normally stop for hitchhikers. Everyone who drives that road at night knows better. But something about how still he was standing got to me, and before I'd fully decided to, I was already slowing down. He got in without much of a greeting. Said his name was Daniel, said his car had died a few miles back and his phone was dead too, asked if I could get him as far as the next town with a gas station. Ordinary enough. I said sure. That's when we shook hands, and that's when I noticed how cold his fingers were, cold in a way that didn't match the warm night air still clinging to the desert. We talked for a while. He was easy to talk to, actually, funny in a low-key way, asked me questions about my route, my job, told me a little about himself, said he was heading back to see his sister in Utah, hadn't seen her in years. Normal road trip conversation, the kind you have with strangers you'll never see again. About 40 minutes in, I noticed the radio had gone from static to nothing at all, not even the hiss, just dead silence, and I hadn't touched the dial. I glanced at Daniel and he was looking out the window like nothing had happened, so I let it go. We kept driving. I remember at one point reaching for my coffee in the cup holder and my hand brushing his arm by accident, and it was cold there too, the whole forearm, cold like he'd been sitting outside in December instead of a warm August night. I made some comment, joked that he ran cold, and he just said, quietly, "Yeah, I've been cold a while now." I laughed it off. He didn't laugh with me. Somewhere past Baker, I pulled into a gas station to fill up, one of those lonely little stations that's more fluorescent light than building. I asked Daniel if he wanted anything from inside. He said no, he'd just wait in the truck. When I came out with my snacks, the clerk, an older guy, was standing in the doorway staring at my truck with a look on his face I didn't like. I asked if everything was okay. He asked me, real quiet, who I had riding with me. I said a hitchhiker I picked up outside Barstow, guy named Daniel. The clerk's face went white and he said, "Buddy, there's nobody in that truck." I turned around. Daniel was sitting right there in the passenger seat, clear as day, looking at me through the windshield. I told the clerk that, pointed right at him. The clerk just shook his head slowly and went back inside without another word, wouldn't even look at the truck again. I got back in the cab. Daniel was still there, asked what took me so long. I didn't say anything about the clerk. I just started driving again, telling myself the guy inside was drunk or messing with me, some kind of local prank on out-of-towners. But my hands were shaking on the wheel and I couldn't explain why. An hour or so after that, I glanced over and noticed Daniel's shirt, the flannel, had a dark stain along the collar I hadn't seen before, like it had soaked through and dried at some point. I asked if he was hurt.
He touched his neck like he'd forgotten something was there and said, "Old thing. Doesn't bother me anymore."
I didn't ask again. We kept talking, less now, longer stretches of quiet between us. I started noticing little things I couldn't unsee once I'd seen them. His reflection in the side mirror looked a half-second delayed from his actual movements, like the glass was catching up to him rather than showing him in real time. When we passed under the orange highway lights, his face didn't light up the way mine did in the mirror, stayed shadowed no matter the angle. By the time the Vegas lights started showing up on the horizon, that orange glow against the black desert, I'd stopped talking almost entirely, just driving, gripping the wheel, telling myself I'd drop him at the next town like I promised and never think about this again. I pulled into a truck stop on the outskirts, told him this was as far as I could take him. He thanked me, said I'd been kind to stop for him, said not many people would have. Then he said something I still think about.
He said, most people drive right past me now. Been standing out there a long time.
I didn't ask what he meant. I just wanted him out of the truck.
He opened the door, and the cab light came on, and for just a second, in that harsh little bulb light, I saw his neck clearly, saw the collar of his shirt and what was underneath it. And I'm not going to describe exactly what I saw because I still don't fully believe it myself.
But it matched what the clerk's face had told me back at that gas station. It matched why the radio had gone dead the second he sat down. He stepped out, shut the door, and walked off toward the dark edge of the parking lot, toward the shoulder of the highway I'd just driven off of, like he was heading right back to mile 191.
I watched him in my mirror until he was too far to see, and he never once looked like he was actually walking on the ground, more like he was gliding an inch above it.
I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that truck stop parking lot until sunrise, doors locked, engine running, telling myself every rational explanation I could think of. In the morning I asked around at the diner attached to the stop if anyone knew a Daniel who used to hitchhike out near Barstow. An older waitress went quiet, then told me a man matching the description had died out on that stretch of highway years back, hit by a car that never stopped, left on the shoulder near mile marker 191 for almost a full day before anyone found him. She said truckers still talk about giving him rides sometimes, said the ones who do never want to talk about how the trip ended. I still drive that route for work. I still pass mile 191 every single time. And some nights, when the road is empty and the radio starts crackling into static right around that marker, I find myself slowing down without meaning to, checking the shoulder, half hoping I don't see him standing there. And half hoping, in some way I can't explain, that I do. My daughter got back in the car at that rest stop off I-70, but the thing sitting in her booster seat was not my daughter, and I drove another 400 miles pretending it was. I told myself I was tired, that the light in that parking lot had been bad, that grief and exhaustion play tricks on a mother's eyes. I don't believe that anymore. We were driving from Kansas City to Denver, just me and my daughter Ivy, who was 6 at the time. My husband was supposed to come but got pulled into work at the last minute, so it was just us two, which Ivy was thrilled about. She loved having me all to herself on long drives, loved picking the songs, loved the little travel games we played counting cows and out-of-state license plates. We'd been on the road about 3 hours when she said she needed the bathroom bad, so I pulled off at a rest stop, one of those big ones with the vending machines and the picnic tables out back and a little strip of trees behind it separating the lot from a cornfield. Nothing unusual about the place. I've stopped there before on other trips. I took her in, we did the bathroom thing, washed hands, I let her pick a snack from the machine, and then she asked if she could go look at the trees for a minute because she saw a dog over there, a little white dog wandering near the tree line. I told her to stay where I could see her. I sat down at a picnic table maybe 30 feet away and watched her walk toward the trees. Here's the thing I keep turning over. I never lost sight of her. Not once. She walked to the edge of the grass, crouched down like she was trying to coax the dog closer, and I could see her the whole time, her pink jacket bright against the green. Maybe 90 seconds like that. Then she stood up, brushed her knees off, and walked back to me, and I honestly didn't think anything of it in the moment. But when she sat back down across from me, something in her face was off, just slightly, in a way I couldn't name yet. I asked if she found the dog.
She said he wanted me to come with him, but I said no because you were watching.
I laughed, told her that was smart, and we headed back to the car. It was in the car, maybe 20 minutes back on the highway, that the small things started stacking up. She usually sang along to whatever was playing, loud and off-key and happy. That day she just stared out the window, quiet, which wasn't like her at all, but I told myself she was probably just sleepy from the drive.
Around the 1 hour mark, I glanced at her in the rear view and caught her looking at me instead of out the window, just watching me, and when our eyes met in the mirror she didn't look away or smile like she normally would. She just kept staring, blank, until I had to look back at the road myself.
My stomach did something strange right then, some instinct I couldn't name yet. We stopped for lunch about 90 minutes later at a diner off the highway. Ivy has been a picky eater her whole life, grilled cheese, chicken tenders, that's about the extent of her range. She ordered a plate of eggs, sunny side up, which she had never once asked for in her life, and ate every bite of the runny yolk without hesitation, something that would have made the old Ivy gag. I asked her since when she liked eggs like that.
She said, I've always liked them like this, in this flat little voice that didn't sound like her voice, not exactly, like someone doing an impression of her from a recording, close but not quite the pitch.
By the time we got back in the car, I'd convinced myself I was imagining things, being paranoid the way you get when you're alone with a kid on a long drive and your brain starts inventing problems to keep itself occupied. I turned on her favorite show on the tablet to see if that would bring her back to herself. She watched it without laughing at the parts that always made her laugh. 2 hours after the rest stop, I made a decision I haven't told many people about. I called my husband, put it on speaker low enough Ivy couldn't hear over the show, and asked him something small. Testing, I said, does Ivy have a birthmark on her left ankle, I forget which side, just to hear him confirm it. He said yes, left ankle, small one, shaped kind of like a comma. He always teased her that it looked like punctuation. That night at the hotel, when I got her ready for bed, I checked. The mark was there, exact same spot, exact same shape. It should have made me feel better.
It didn't, because something about a mark being physically correct while everything else felt wrong made it worse, like whatever this was had done its own work. That night in the hotel, she woke up around 2 in the morning, sat straight up in the bed we were sharing, and asked me, in that same flat voice, can we go back and get the dog? He's still waiting.
I told her it was the middle of the night and we didn't have a dog to get.
She looked at me for a long moment, longer than a Gruggy 6-year-old should be capable of holding a stare, and then she lay back down and went right back to sleep like nothing happened.
I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat up watching her breathe, telling myself all the reasonable things. Kids get weird on road trips. Kids pick up strange moods. Kids say odd things half asleep.
But somewhere under all that reasoning was a colder thought I couldn't shake, the thought that I had watched my daughter walk to a tree lean for 90 seconds and I could not, if someone put a gun to my head, tell them with total certainty that what walked back to me was the same person who walked out.
We finished the drive to Denver the next day. I watched her the whole way, cataloging every tiny thing, the way she held her fork, the way she hummed under her breath, some of it matching my memory of her perfectly and some of it landing just slightly wrong, like a song played a half-step off key, close enough that a stranger would never notice, wrong enough that a mother couldn't stop noticing. She's 8 now. Most days I forget about that rest stop entirely, get swept up in normal life, school pickups, birthday parties, all of it. But some nights, when she's asleep and I'm checking on her the way parents do, I find myself standing in her doorway a little longer than I need to, watching her chest rise and fall, waiting for something in her face to shift back into place, or maybe waiting to catch it shifting out of place again. I've never told her about that day.
I've never told her that sometimes, when we drive past rest stops on the highway, I catch her turning her head to watch the tree lean until it's well out of sight, and I've never once asked her why, because some part of me is afraid I already know, and an even smaller part of me is afraid of what she'd say if I did.
A silver truck sat exactly 4 car lengths behind me for 11 straight hours across 3 states, and when I finally forced myself to pull over and confront the driver, I was looking at my own face behind the wheel. I want to tell you it was a trick of exhaustion. I don't think it was. I drive long hauls sometimes for extra money between semesters, mostly short regional runs, but that spring I took a job moving a friend's belongings from Ohio down to Texas in a rented box truck, an 18-hour drive I planned to do mostly straight through with one overnight stop. I left around 6 in the morning, figuring I'd make good time before traffic picked up. Somewhere around Louisville, maybe 3 hours in, I first noticed the silver pickup behind me. Nothing remarkable about that on its own, plenty of trucks on that stretch of highway heading the same general direction. It stayed a steady distance back, 4 or 5 car lengths, matching my speed almost exactly whenever I sped up or slowed down. I didn't think twice about it. People do that, find a comfortable following distance and just ride it for a while. It was maybe 2 hours later, somewhere past Nashville, when I noticed the truck was still there. Same silver color, same distance, and I remember thinking that was a long time for 2 vehicles to happen to keep the same pace without one of us passing the other or pulling off. I sped up to test it, pushed maybe 10 over what I'd been doing. The truck matched me within about 30 seconds, closing the gap back to exactly where it had been. I told myself it was nothing, some trucker on the same route just going the same speed out of habit, and I turned the radio up and tried to stop thinking about it. But every time I glanced in the mirror over the next hour, there it was, that flash of silver, same distance, like it was tethered to my bumper by an invisible line. I stopped for gas outside Nashville, half expecting the truck to pull in behind me or pass on by, proving it was just some random coincidence. Someone with their own errands who'd happened to keep pace with me for a while and now would peel off. Instead it stayed on the shoulder of the highway, not at the gas station, not moving, just sitting there on the shoulder maybe a quarter-mile back, engine presumably running, until I got back on the road, at which point it pulled out and resumed its position behind me like it had never left. That's when the first real unease set in. I called my friend, the one whose stuff I was hauling, put it on speaker, told her about the truck, half joking, half not. She laughed it off, said truckers do weird things, told me to stop being paranoid and focus on driving. I wanted to believe her. An hour later, somewhere in the stretch of Tennessee that turns into a long monotonous nothing of trees and green highway signs, I tried something else. I took an exit I didn't need, just to see. The truck took the same exit behind me, same distance, same pace. I got back on the highway at the next entrance. So did it. At that point my hands were sweating on the wheel and I stopped trying to convince myself it was coincidence. I called my friend back, and this time I could hear in my own voice that I wasn't joking anymore, and she must have heard it too because she went quiet and told me to call the police if I really thought I was being followed. I did. A state trooper met me at a way station about 40 minutes later, and I explained the situation, feeling a little foolish saying it out loud. A truck has been following me for 6 hours. The trooper humored me, said he'd keep an eye out. I sat at that way station for 20 minutes. The silver truck never showed. I got back on the highway, relieved, telling myself that was the end of it. It wasn't. About 40 minutes past the way station, there it was again in my mirror, same distance, like it had simply been waiting somewhere out of sight for me to pass by again. I don't know how it knew which road I'd take. I hadn't announced my route to anyone but my friend. By the time the sun started going down, somewhere in Mississippi, I'd stopped calling anyone, stopped trying anything clever, just drove, watching that shape in my mirror get more solid and more familiar looking as the light faded and its headlights became the dominant thing I could see back there, twin points holding steady behind me mile after mile. Somewhere around hour 9, driving in full dark now, I made myself look longer than a glance, really look at what I could make out of the shape behind the wheel of that truck in my mirror, silhouetted by passing headlights from the oncoming lanes.
And for just a half second, in one flash of oncoming light, I could have sworn the outline of that driver's head turned at the exact same moment mine did, tilted the exact same angle, like a reflection with a half-second delay rather than a separate person entirely.
I told myself I was exhausted, hallucinating from hours of staring at reflective lane markers, and that the smart thing to do was pull off somewhere well-lit and populated and wait it out until morning. Maybe call my friend again, maybe just breathe. I took the next exit into a small town, pulled into a lit-up gas station lot with a few other cars around, cameras visible on the building, the kind of place where nothing bad happens because there are witnesses. The silver truck pulled in right behind me. I don't fully know what made me get out of my truck instead of locking the doors and waiting. Maybe 11 hours of fear had curdled into something closer to reckless anger. I walked toward that truck with my phone in my hand, already dialing, ready to shout for someone to call the police again, and the driver's door opened before I got there. I'm not going to try to convince you of what I saw, because I've spent a long time since then trying to talk myself out of believing it.
The man who stepped out was wearing clothes I recognized because they were mine, a jacket identical to the one I had on, and when the gas station lights hit his face directly, it was my face, not similar, not a family resemblance, my face, down to the small scar above my eyebrow from a bike accident when I was 9. He didn't say anything.
He just looked at me, the same way you'd look at your reflection while checking if you had something in your teeth, mildly, almost bored, and then he got back in the truck, shut the door, and pulled out of the lot, heading back the direction we'd both come from. I didn't follow him. I sat in that gas station parking lot until it got light out, and then I finished the drive to Texas in a single exhausted push, checking my mirror less than I probably should have, because some part of me was more afraid of seeing it than of whatever might happen if I stopped looking. I still drive that same interstate sometimes for work. I've never seen the truck again.
But every so often, when I'm alone on a long long stretch at night and I catch my own reflection in the black glass of the windshield at just the wrong angle, positioned like it's sitting a few feet behind me instead of in front. I find myself checking the mirror anyway, just to be sure of which direction I'm actually facing.